The quiet hit first. It pressed against the cinderblock walls of the visiting locker room like a weather system, heavy and unmoving. Helmets found their way to the floor with dull thuds. Cleats scraped slowly across concrete. A few players stared at the stat sheet as if it might change if they willed it hard enough. Others bent at the waist, hands on knees, counting their breath. After the final whistle at State Farm Stadium, the sound that lingered wasn't the roar of Cardinals fans or the crackle of fireworks outside. It was the hush of a team taking stock of a night that slipped through their fingers. Out on the field, before the doors closed, a camera caught a single frame that would travel farther than any highlight. Travis Kelce, head bowed, wiping at his eyes, fighting for composure. 1 second of human honesty in a sport that rarely rewards it. The clip hit timelines and timelines hit each other, fans pausing, replaying, arguing about what it meant. For some, it was raw heartbreak. For others, it was proof that the game was still bigger than the contracts and the endorsements. The image said what the scoreboard couldn't. This hurt. Patrick Mahomes walked into the media room with that same hurt still on his face. The red jersey looked heavier than usual, dark with sweat, the collar tugged just enough to hint at the night's toll. He answered the first few questions with the measured rhythm of a leader who understands every word can spark a week of chatter. Then someone asked about Kelce. Mahomes looked down and smiled in a way that wasn't about joy. It was about respect. He called Kelce a warrior. He said those tears weren't weakness. They were proof of investment, proof of love, proof of a player who gives himself to every snap. They had prepared. They believed. When reality didn't match the script, emotion had nowhere to hide. Reporters would later say Mahomes made a point of finding his tight end in the locker room, of pulling him into a long embrace and whispering something meant for one person but destined to be repeated anyway. We'll be back. When we are, no one will stop us. It wasn't bluster. It was a pledge between two men who had built entire seasons on trust. In that moment, it was less pep talk and more covenant, a reminder that the play calls and the protections and the routes only matter because of the bond underneath them. Not far from the swirl of microphones and lights, Taylor Swift was there, not on a red carpet or a stage, just present, a steadying hand at the edges of a chaotic night. Her influence in this story has always been strange theater to outsiders and perfectly normal to anyone who understands that athletes are not islands. Partners, parents, kids, friends with spare jackets standing in cold tunnels, they all matter. The quiet encouragement, the listening without the need to fix anything, sometimes changes tomorrow's practice more than any film session. Inside the private meeting with coaches, the tone shifted from grief to grit. Andy Reid, calm as ever, worked through the list. Lessons first, excuses never. Execution over emotion. Discipline on defense. Ball security in traffic. Cleaner releases at the line for the receivers. Better leverage on the edge. This was not a lecture. It was a blueprint. The staff drilled fundamentals until muscle memory smoothed out hesitation. The receivers attacked timing routes like they were auditioning for a metronome. The defense called out coverages louder, trusting the echo to spread clarity. Leaders set the tone without delivering speeches. The standard was the speech. Out in the world, the clip of Kelce's tears traveled through the same channels that usually carry choreographed dances and locker room jokes. Only this time, the reaction wasn't just highlight reels and hot takes. Fans started posting their own stories of losses that changed them, of moments when they felt seen because someone on a screen felt something real. Artwork poured in. Sketches of Kelce with helmet in hand, digital portraits of Mahomes, steadying a teammate. The city's voice wrapped around the team like a scarf on a cold night. One game, people said, does not define a season. One moment does not define a legacy. When Arrowhead opened its gates for the next home game, a different kind of electricity sprinted through the parking lots and past the drum deck. It wasn't just bravado. It was defiance sharpened into purpose. The pre-game noise hit a pitch that made words useless. You felt it in your ribs. From the first series, there was an edge to everything. Kelce's releases had a slice to them. Mahomes' footwork was a study in controlled fury. The defense closed in, swarming to the ball with the precision of a pack not interested in giving up another inch. Every big moment triggered a thunderclap of applause. Not relief, confirmation. This is who we are. That night in Arizona moved quickly from trending topic a shared origin story. Players referenced it in interviews without staring backward. Fans discussed it on podcasts like a folk tale that explained the present. Even rivals nodded toward it with a kind of backhanded respect. The tears and the promise folded into the franchise's larger mythology, another chapter in a book that already holds comebacks, heartbreaks, fourth-quarter miracles, and cold-weather epics. What made this chapter stand out wasn't a stat line. It was the clarity of values under pressure. As the weeks stacked up, the Chiefs treated every challenge like a stepping stone rather than a test of identity. The offense evolved, not by reinventing itself, but by trimming the fat and emphasizing what traveled well. The quick game regained its snap. The shot plays were earned, not forced. The line moved like a single organism on screens and draws. Kelce became more than a target. He was a thermostat, turning the temperature up on third down, cooling the huddle with a joke when tension needed a vent. Mahomes, as ever, was the reluctant magician, making the impossible look inevitable only after setting up the mundane with relentless patience. On the sideline, you could see little rituals form. A nod after a drive-ending catch, a touch on the helmet after a block that sprung a run, a quiet word from a veteran to a rookie who just missed an assignment. These were the stitches that held together fabric under strain. After wins, Kelce and Mahomes would find each other in the geometric chaos of high fives and camera booms. Sometimes they'd hug, sometimes it was a look that said the same thing. We know what this took. Taylor Swift's appearances in the stands continued to draw cameras, but within the team, her presence felt less like spectacle and more like continuity. She celebrated in the right-sized way, cheered without trying to steal focus, and then disappeared back into the tapestry of family and friends who make victory feel like community. In a league that often celebrates isolation as toughness, the Chiefs kept leaning into connection as their competitive edge. Loved ones waited in tunnels and crowded around loading docks late at night, and somehow the next day's practices ran cleaner. By the time the regular season arch came into view, something subtle had changed. The team's voice in press conferences carried that lightness of people who work hard without gripping too tight. The defense communicated in shorthand that only comes from countless reps. The offense trusted its layers. Even when a drive stalled, the body language didn't wilt. They had absorbed the lesson that a season is less a parade than a marathon through weather you can't control. Arizona remained part of a story, but it no longer defined the mood. It defined the resolve. Then came mistakes. Playoff week. The time when details decide everything. The practice fields were colder, the lights brighter, the questions sharper, and yet inside the building there was a steadiness born of earlier bruises. Coaches trimmed the game plan to what sang. Situational drills were run until they felt like instinct. Younger players gravitated toward Kelce, who now seemed to spend as much time teaching as catching. Mahomes turned from improvisational genius to ruthless manager of moments, choosing the high-percentage throw that set up the dagger rather than hunting the dagger on every snap. In those games, you saw it play out. Drives that started ugly became poems by their third stanza. The defense timed its pressure just right, trust layered over trust. Special teams executed the kind of small excellence that only gets noticed when it fails. The team wore discipline like a second jersey. When the ball went to Kelce in the middle of the field, he ran like he was escaping gravity, then handed it back to the official with a nod that said there was more work to do. When Mahomes scrambled, he moved not to sculpt a miracle but to bend the geometry toward a better angle. Around them, the city swelled. Signs taped to windows. Kids in oversized jerseys walking into school on Monday with cheeks still red from winter wind and voices hoarse from Sunday night. Social feeds filled with more than highlights. They carried gratitude, tiny thank yous to players who had no idea how these little victories could make long weeks bearable. A football team can't fix a town's problems. It can, sometimes, give a town a place to put its hope for a few hours. After Arizona, that hope felt earned rather than assumed. And that's the thread that kept the season taut. The Chiefs didn't deny the loss. They integrated it. They matured not by growing harder, but by getting clearer. What do we value when the clock says we're done for the day, but the mind won't let go? How do we show up for each other when the cameras aren't rolling? Who do we want to be when that one frame everyone keeps replaying threatens to define us? The answers don't live on a stat sheet. They live in the everyday grind, in the patience to rewatch the same mistake until it reveals the fix, in the courage to admit it